Today we are looking at two neurons, the presynaptic and the postsynaptic. And the presynaptic neuron, we have a fruit roll-up acting as the soma. The soma is important because it's a part of the neuron that contains the nucleus. Next we have a lifesaver, which is the green thing, and it's acting as a nucleus. The nucleus is important because it directs the manufacture of substances that the neuron needs for growth and maintenance. Attached to the soma are the dendrites, which are the Twizzlers, and they are branching extensions that receive messages and conduct the impulses towards the cell body, which is the soma. Branching out from the dendrites are the dendritic spines, which are small protrusions that typically receive input from a single axon at the synapse. The axon is part of the neuron that carries information away from the cell body and towards other cells, and that is a Twizzler. The nodes of Ranvier are a periodic gap in between the myelin sheath, which are the gummy worms broken up, and they help with transmission of impulses. And the myelin sheath is a layer of fatty tissue, which are the gummy worms, and they insulate axons and increase the velocity of conduction of the action potential along the axon. The axon terminal is the knob-like structure at the end of an axon. They contain vesicles, which is down here. This is a little inside the axon terminal. We have our vesicles here with little neuron transmitters inside of each of them, and that connects back over here to these little neuron transmitters. The neuron transmitters are the chemical substances that transmits info across the synaptic gap to the next neuron. So in the presynaptic, this is the messaging neuron. The message is being sent to the postsynaptic neuron, which is receiving the message, and it's all transmitted through the neurotransmitters at the synapse. The synapse is a tiny space between the axon and one neuron and the dendrite of another. This is where the neurotransmitters deliver messages from this neuron to the receiving neuron. So right here is a receptor site. It's at the synapse, and it's where the neurotransmitters are transmitting the message to the postsynaptic neuron. So it's just the receptor sites. There are a couple processes that happen while the presynaptic neuron is transmitting a message to the postsynaptic. One is resting potential. It's the resting state of a neuron when it is not transmitting information. So right now that would be the presynaptic neuron. It's just resting. It's not ready to fire any impulses or anything. And then the action potential is when something like a sense or a message from a neighboring neuron stimulates the neuron, and a brief wave of positive electrical charge travels down the axon to deliver the message to the postsynaptic neuron. And this abides by the all or nothing principle, which means that once the electrical impulse reaches a certain level of intensity, which is its threshold, it fires and moves all the way down the axon without losing any of its intensity, so it just stays at the same level. And depolarization is when an incoming impulse raises the neuron's voltage and opens ion channels, which causes potassium ions to flow out and sodium ions to flow in. And so these channels open up one after another like falling dominoes, and it just helps. The axon becomes depolarized, but when it's in the resting potential, it's polarized. So if too much of the neurotransmitter is secreted into the synapse or absorbed by the synapse, it will just hang out there and be eaten up by other enzymes, or it can be reabsorbed by the presynaptic neuron in a process called reputate.